Right now, one signature on one piece of paper could be worth more than every missile fired in this war combined. And almost nobody is watching for it. Today. I'm going to show you the single event that, if it happens, turns a regional war into a global reset, and why the pressure on every side is building toward it. Not away from it. Before we go further, quick gut check for you. Do you think the current war stays contained to the region, or does it pull in a third power? Drop your answer in the comments, because by the end of this, you might change your mind. I quote M. James Calloway. I look at conflicts the way an engineer looks at a bridge, under load, not the headlines, the stress points. And right now, one stress point is flashing red dot. Every air campaign has a ceiling. It can degrade an opponent, but past a certain point, it stops producing new results. It just repeats them. That's the phase this conflict is entering. Strikes continue, but the strategic picture stops moving. Historically, that's the moment political pressure shifts from finish the job with air power to what's the next option. That's a dangerous hinge point, because the next option is rarely smaller than the last one. Watch for the tone shift from officials from progress language to resolve language. That shift is the tell lane. Some countries build their defense around winning a decisive battle. Others build it around never having won, dispersing command, hardening infrastructure, and making any invader bleed slowly instead of losing quickly. Analysts who study this kind of mosaic defense doctrine point out it's specifically designed to survive exactly the kind of campaign we're watching. It doesn't need to win, it just needs to not lose fast. That changes the entire calculus for anyone considering a ground option. The cost isn't a battle, it's an occupation. Here quotes the piece most coverage skips. This isn't only a two-sided war. A major regional partner of one side sits on a strategic corridor, trade routes, energy transit, access to warm water ports that a third power depends on for its own long-term economic survival under sanctions. If that partner state collapses or falls under foreign occupation, the third power doesn't just lose an ally, it loses a lifeline. That's not sentiment. That's structural self-interest. And structural self-interest is the most reliable predictor in geopolitics. Picture the scenario analysts increasingly flag as plausible. Ground forces cross a border. Within days, a nuclear-armed third power issues a public statement not committing troops. Just a red line. No nuclear use by anyone. Or it responds. That single sentence changes nothing on the battlefield and changes everything about it. It removes the one card that could shorten a ground war. Whoever's on the ground is now stuck fighting the long way with no shortcut left. If. This kind of structural thinking is useful to you. Hit subscribe now, because the next 3 blocks are where this scenario compounds into something much bigger than one war. A prolonged ground conflict doesn't stay in its lane. Munition stockpiles built for one theater get drained supporting another. Allies waiting on deliveries elsewhere start waiting longer. And every unit tied down in one region is a unit not available to deter tension in another. Rival powers don't need to fight directly. They just need their main competitor pinned down somewhere else for long enough. That's a strategy older than any of us. Exhaust, don't engage. Energy markets hate uncertainty more than they hate high prices. A short disruption is a spike. A prolonged one is a repricing. And repricing shows up everywhere. Fuel, freight, food, and eventually interest rates. That's the transmission chain that turns a regional war into a kitchen table problem worldwide. Here's the actionable takeaway. Don't watch the war headlines for the economic signal. Watch energy futures pricing 3 and 6 months out. That's where the market is already voting. The most important shifts in a system rarely arrive as an announcement. They arrive as a trade deal. A currency swap line, a pipeline agreement, small, boring, bilateral. Individually, none of them threaten anything. Together, over enough time, they're how a reserve currency's dominance erodes. Nobody votes to leave a system. They just quietly build a smaller one next to it. That's the pattern to track. Not speeches, paperwork, wars that stall don't just cost money and lives. They cost legitimacy. When a public that already has doubts about a conflict watches it extend with no clear end state, the question people ask stops being, was this decision right? And becomes, does the process that makes these decisions actually work? That's a much harder question for any government to answer, and it doesn't go away when the war does. Here, quote, it's the honest counter case because you deserve it. None of this happens if leadership on any side chooses de-escalation over an option that looks decisive. Wars don't have to follow their own worst-case logic. leaders can, and often do, step back from it. The scenario I've walked through isn't a prediction of certainty. It's a map of where the pressure is pointing, not a guarantee of where anyone ends up walking. 3 things worth tracking if you want to see this coming before headlines catch up. 1 language, not headlines. Watch for the shift from concern to conditions. We're concerned about escalation is diplomacy. Certain actions will not be tolerated is a red line being drawn. 2 industrial signals. Emergency production contracts, expedited manufacturing timelines, supply chain announcements from defense-adjacent industries. Factories tend to signal what's coming before officials say it out loud. 3. Where the safe haven money moves. Gold, reserve currency composition data, sovereign wealth fund allocations. That's where institutions quietly hedge against outcomes they won't discuss publicly. None of these signals guarantee the scenario plays out. But together, they're the difference between being surprised by a headline and having already understood the shape of it. The war in front of the cameras is rarely the whole story. The real story is in the incentives underneath it, and those move slower, quieter, and further ahead than anything you'll see on the news tonight. If this kind of analysis is useful, subscribe. I'll be tracking these 3 signals as they develop. Tell me in the comments, which of the 3 do you think moves first? This video presents scenario analysis and informed speculation, not confirmed intelligence or guaranteed outcomes. It is not professional, financial, or policy advice. Consult qualified experts for decisions that depend on how this situation develops.